Hey Aquarius, how's it going? Are you familiar with the acronym vitriol? V-I-T-R-I-O-L? It's a Latin phrase used by Renaissance era and medieval alchemists. Visita interiora terra, rectificando inveniis occultum lapidum. What that means is visit the interior of the earth, and in rectifying what you discover there, you will create the hidden stone. Now, I'm telling you this because it was what I was reminded of during my meditation with you. What I saw was a sword falling from above, tip pointed down. The first thing I thought of was, is that Excalibur? I don't know if it was, but it could just be my mild obsession with Arthurian myth that brought it to mind, but it felt like strong while it was happening. And anyway, the tip drove into the earth, and like I followed it, like, you know, imagine a camera that could magically somehow go into the earth with the sword, and it was just easily driving through the soil, through the bedrock, and down pretty deep into the crust, and the tip eventually hit this glowing red mass about this large. I don't know if it was a gemstone or a ball of energy. I couldn't really see, but because as soon as the tip hit it, like magma started to move upward out of it in a bunch of different directions, but you know, generally upward through the ground, and then it began to like splash out of the ground. Not forcefully, not super forcefully, not like a volcano, but kind of just like splurts and globs of magma. And but the odd thing was, whenever it splashed onto the ground, onto the soil, like lovely fauna, or flora rather, started growing, like flowers and grasses and little pretty shrubs and stuff like that started growing where the hot magma was landing, like immediately growing. It was very strange. I'm not sure what it means, other than right after I saw it, I was thinking of vitriol, because finding, you know, the occultum lapidum, the so-called philosopher's stone, by going within, you know, the interior of the earth, or within yourself, the philosopher's stone is said to be red in color, and it, you know, the tip of the sword hit the this red mass. And a sword can be representative of your mind, your consciousness, your intellect, your thoughts, perhaps, or your words, your communication. So trying to piece it together, I think you have an awareness of the Philosopher's Stone. And of course, the Philosopher's Stone is said to be able to allow you to create the Elixir of life. So when the magma came up out of the ground from this red mass, whatever this red mass was, and it created life. So there's this vibrant, vital heat energy that is not destructive, but is in fact creative, that I think your awareness is being put on at this time. Not totally sure, but it was quite a sight. Then I pulled an I Ching hexagram for you, and I got hexagram 28, dog wool, or great exceeding, and we have a changing line, the sixth line all the way at the top, so it changes to hexagram 44, or encountering. Now, this is the preceding hexagram of this, or it's sort of like inverted opposite, is nourishing. So this is like, after nourishing, there is great exceeding. There's this excess of something. It could be like an excess of energy that you need to use and burn off, you know? Sometimes we eat a big meal, we might want to make sure we exercise pretty well the next day or something like that, or after a few hours or something, you know, burn off the calories, right? It could be something as simple as that. Or it could be like there's something excessive that needs to be pruned out of your life, perhaps. Perhaps they're outdated things you no longer need. It could just be like stuff that you've accumulated, like a great accumulation of stuff, and you just need to find out what you actually need and what you can get rid of. It could be outdated relationships or friendships, perhaps. I know that might not be for everyone, but sometimes these things happen, and it could be work, it could be habits, it could be goals you had, it could be really anything, opinions and views. There could be an excess of stuff that you just got to prune out of your life, and you got to examine which ones are truly useful, beneficial, and beautiful. Keep those, and just be absolutely ruthless with everything else, and cut the rest of it out of your life. But be compassionate. You can be both ruthless and compassionate, because sometimes we just got to take extraordinary action in a ruthless way, in a decisive way. But of course we can still be loving and caring and compassionate when we do so. But you're being asked to take some type of extraordinary action, because when we have this excess, extraordinary action is necessary. Because here we have an image of like a support beam that holds up a house that's kind of bending under a lot of weight. And if the situation doesn't change, that support beam, that support beam is going to snap. There's if something is either too firm, it can break. And of course, if it's too weak, it can break. So excessive firmness is actually a type of brittleness and can break. And then excessive weakness obviously can lead to breakage. So here you're being asked to follow the Tao of adjustment, right? The principle, like you've got to master the principle of adjusting. And as long as you can adjust and add firmness where there is weakness or deficiency, or add softness where there's too much firmness, take away the firmness and create some suppleness, or take away the weakness by adding some firmness, something like that. A perfect adjustment, or mastering the art of adjustment, will lead to success in this. We'll make sure that this support beam, whatever it is, doesn't break. It could be, your sanity. It could be, something like that. Your patience, perhaps. Who knows what it is? It could be really anything. It could be a job. It could be a household. It could be anything. But there's an excessive amount of pressure or weight on something, or there's an excessive amount of things or energy around something that needs to be pruned or used and burned off and used like productively. But we have that changing line, the 6th line there, which is not the best changing line for this hexagram, because essentially it means like you're on your own with this decision. It might be because most people around you perhaps don't understand the situation and therefore can't really give you that good of advice. It could be because a lot of what you're cutting out of your life are old relationships, and of course, to avoid conflict and to be compassionate, it might be best not to like overly discuss that sort of thing with the people you're about to cut out of your life. To be tactful and to be mindful of people's feelings and to avoid trouble could be why you're on your own here. But basically this decision of choosing what is excessive and what is necessary, what you can prune and what is beneficial and worthy of being kept, is something that you kind of just have to search within yourself and around your own life, and you might have to decide this on your own. Now that might not be it for everybody. There could be some people who have very, very close and trusted people in your lives that you could confide in. It's not that you're necessarily totally on your own, but I do get the sense that obviously the final say in this situation is yours and nobody else's. Now, another thing with having this 6th line is kind of like, we get an image of crossing a river, but the water goes over your head a bit. It's like being in too deep, There's some danger, but not too much, because this isn't like a dangerous hexagram. This isn't like a terrible sign to get. It's just like, okay, there's some danger, there's some trouble here, but you'll get through it because you know what you have to do. But it's either the water went over your head either because you may have overreacted about something recently or overreacted about this situation. But if that, sometimes an overreaction is necessary because sometimes people don't hear us properly or understand us properly, and there's really nothing we can do about it. And we're still stuck in a situation, and the people around us are not having compassion, they're not having understanding, and then we overreact, and it might be necessary because sometimes the people around us need like a wake-up call. They need to know where your boundaries are. But even so, it can still land us in hot water or deep water when we have an overreaction. Even if we are in the right to do so, it will still put a bad taste in people's mouths, and it might saddle us with a little bit of trouble. And that may have happened for some of you. For others, this hexagram with the 6th line changing could be interpreted as you just gained a great deal of responsibility or territory, like a windfall came in. Maybe a windfall of wealth, but I get more, it's like a windfall of you've been saddled with a bunch of responsibilities or given a lot of territory, a lot of like leeway, a lot of maybe power over things. And now you realize like, oh my God, there's so much stuff here that I need to reorganize now. I just gained all of this stuff. Maybe it's like an estate. And now I need to figure out what to do with all of this. And I don't know if I can do something with all of it. There's going to be stuff left by the wayside. There's going to be people that I can't delegate jobs to, and they might have to like get fired or something. Like there's just so much here. So that might be for some of you, because this hexagram indicates a historical situation from ancient China where there was a tyrant who was just overthrown. In fact, by the guy who wrote the I Ching, who came up with this divination system. His name was King Wen, and he overthrew the Shang dynasty, who were these it was a very tyrannical government. And after this dynasty was overthrown, King Wen appointed his friend Zhou to develop his own dynasty and his own government. And so basically, they took over a government, unseated the people who had the positions of power, and then they like immediately gained basically rule over an entire nation, right? Like kingdoms and things like that, city-states, and they had to like delegate all of these responsibilities. They had to reorganize the economy. They had to appoint governors. They had to appoint military leaders. They had to appoint the people who would run the religious rites. There was just so much that they had to just suddenly do because they inherited an entire government and had to reorganize the whole society. And the Duke of Zhou, he did it with like this deep spiritual reverence. He knew it was a huge responsibility. He did it with compassion and understanding and righteousness and nobility, and he did the best he could, appointing governors and all this sort of thing. But of course, there were still governors and politicians and other economists and whatnot from the other dynasty, from the tyrannical one, who they were waiting, like, what are you going to have us do? Because not all of them were evil people. They were just working for the government, and they wanted to, a lot of them expected to keep their jobs or get only slightly different jobs or something. And there was just those guys who helped him overthrow this government, and they wanted those positions. They wanted to be the governors and replace all those guys. They wanted to be the economists and the merchants and the religious leaders and whatnot. And so there were all these decisions to be made. And you could imagine how stressful something like that must be. And yeah, he just felt like he was crossing a river and the water went over his head. And the truth is, he couldn't satisfy everybody. It was just impossible to do so. There was no way to do it. So he did the best he could, and he cut what he believed was unnecessary. He fired, he carefully assessed all the different people who he had to give positions of power to. He carefully assessed all the different policies and economic policies and laws and all this stuff, and he looked at very carefully what everybody wanted him to do, and he did the best he could. He changed what he could, he appointed who he could, who he thought would be the most beneficial, and he got rid of who and what he thought would be the most detrimental. And it was just an excessive amount of people, an excessive amount of resources, and he couldn't make use of all of it, and a lot of it had to get cut. But there was no fault. Sure, there were many people who were pissed off at him, people who were dissatisfied with his choices, friends and foes alike who had negative emotional reactions or negative opinions about what he did, but nobody blamed him for it. There was no fault there. It was like, okay, we're displeased here, but we can see this situation was insane. There was so much for this guy to figure out. And you might be in a situation like this, so my advice is to just understand that whatever it was, whether it was an overreaction on your part, or if it was an excessive windfall of something that you now have to take care of, whatever failures you have are really not your fault, and there's not anything to blame you for whatever fails. It's like, this is a situation where it's like, okay, I'm gonna pay attention and tread carefully and do my best, but you know, if things fail, if things fall by the wayside, if things get cut out, there's nothing I can do. And so there's no sense in feeling guilty, there's no sense in feeling bad. Be compassionate, but don't blame yourself. No one's gonna blame you, at least anyone who's honest and can honestly see the situation you're in. No one's gonna hold hard feelings against you, even if they have some temporary hard feelings in the meantime. Ultimately, you're not gonna be blamed for any of this, so just do the best you can right now. This is why it's like you're on your own, because nobody else wants to do this. Everyone's like, yeah, you could take care of this. So let's develop this a little bit further. So just relax, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be hard, but it's gonna be fine. So we're gonna spin a coin, point at one of these 24 symbols here. These are 24 aspects of life, aspects of reality. The Oracle will have us focus on one of these aspects of your life, and we'll pull some cards for you. So what does Aquarius need to know? The nurse. Now the symbol for the nurse I chose, like that heart rate monitor, kind of that squiggly line thing. So yeah, the nurse, this is someone who's very, very helpful, selflessly helpful, very supportive, very knowledgeable, ready to do what is necessary, very compassionate, someone who's warm, has good bedside manner, right? Someone who is tactful and responsible. So this could be you, or this could be someone in your life. This could be a part of yourself. This could be a spirit guide who's with you, who's a comforter to you now. This could be any of those things, but the nurse, you know, it's the nurse. She's the bomb. She's great. She's a healer. Yeah, it's just indicative of healing, a process of recuperation, getting the right medicine, getting the doctor to do his damn job when he's not doing it. You know what I mean. So what does Aquarius need to know about the nurse aspect of their life? So we've got the Six of Cups. So this could be someone that you know, someone from your childhood, someone that you can share stories with, whom you have shared stories with. This deck sometimes has little words down at the bottom. This one says pleasure. This is a Scorpio card, a sun in Scorpio. So this could be a special kind of nurse. Hey now, get your mind back out of the gutter. But this is like a friend. Or it could be an experience or a memory from your past that can be like your happy place, that can like teach you how to get through this without feeling bad. Like helping you realize like, oh yeah, there is no fault. Like there will be failures here. There will be things cut out and left by the wayside because there's no choice but to leave things by the wayside because there's just so much. There's an excess here. But an experience from my past reminds me, like, yeah, these things happen. There's no need to feel guilty. There's no need to blame myself for it. Like, it's just like spring cleaning. You just get rid of the stuff you don't need. And everybody understands. Now, you could have a friend, an old friend, who's going to just be a great help to you at this point. If you have a good friend, and if you feel a need to talk to this person, to call this person, to text this person, like, don't hesitate. I think you should do it. The worst that can happen is they don't want to talk to you and they hang up. The best that can happen is that you gain a really helpful companion who has some sage advice or just some good vibes. Just some good vibes, who's just going to be there for you, and won't judge you, and will just, like, you know, when you have a hard day's work and you delegate and you're figuring this stuff out, your friend will just be there to, I don't know, cook you a nice meal and chill out and, like, put on a good DVD or something and just hang out with you and let you wind down or talk about it or something like that. Let's pull another card for you, develop this further. The Nurse, the Six of Cups, great exceeding. Someone who will help, you know, take your mind off the pressure you're dealing with, help you remember that the pressure you're feeling is natural. It's not like an emergency. It's an emergency in the sense that you have to do something. You know, you have to take an extraordinary action, otherwise that house will cave in. But you're gonna, like, it's not like you're not going to do it. So it's like a natural thing. But it does take your willpower to, like, take this step. It's not gonna happen for you. You have to make these choices, and you have to carry out the action before it's too late. But I get the sense that you will, like, you know you have to. You know this is that time. You know it's time to do it. What have we here? Vibration. This is a cool one. So here we have vibrationes. We have a peacock and some pillars and, like, this interesting garden. Now we have two pillars here, which makes me think of Joachim and Boaz, or the if you know the High Priestess card, she sits between two pillars here. I always get the sense that this is kind of like the High Priestess card of this deck, or at least related to it. The peacock is a symbol of, like, the opulence of the divine, the omniscience of the divine, not only the diversity of phenomena that the divine creates, but also the ability to see and behold and understand it all. Like, the peacock feather looks sort of like an eye and is iridescent in color, like multicolored depending on the angle that you look at. And this just connotes, like, an everythingness, an awareness of the details of everything, and the ability to see lots and lots of different stuff. It's like, it's just that sort of third eye symbol, where the third eye, like, you're aware of so much. And so perhaps this friend that's coming in, or this nurse spirit, this helpful energy, is a very wise person, or a very wise energy, maybe a very wise part of yourself, who sees exactly what it is you're going through and can offer you that sort of graceful love that, like, God would offer you at a time like this, where it's just like, it's okay, step by step, just do it. You gotta be ruthless. You gotta get rid of what you gotta get rid of, and it's all gonna be okay. Now, this reminds me, the peacock feather, reminds me of Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita. You know, Krishna is symbolized by peacock feathers. He wears peacock feathers in his hair and things like that. Some of his arrows are fletched with peacock feathers. Not that those would make great fletching, but it's symbolic, right? Now, Krishna comes to Arjuna on the battlefield because Arjuna is the prince of a city, and this city is being besieged by an invading army, a conquering army that's been going around the world conquering cities and being pretty awful with what they do after they conquer the city. If you can imagine, you know, I won't get into the graphic details, but imagine what, you know, ancient soldiers might have done after conquering a city. And so Arjuna was tasked with defending his people from this conquering military force. And he was a great warrior. He was trained in all the martial arts and weapons and everything. He knows his stuff. And when this army showed up, he realized, like, oh my God, my grandfathers are in that army. I got like 12 uncles here, like 15 cousins, like some of my friends that I grew up with, like, oh my God, they're all in the opposing army. Like, I don't want to fight these people. This is insane. And so Krishna, who was an incarnation of essentially God, Vishnu, came up to Arjuna, his friend, and was like, look, man, those people, like, do you have any idea what they're about to do to your city? Like, you have to fight. I know you don't want to. Like, you don't want to kill your relatives and friends. Of course, that's horrible, but you have to do it. And to be honest with you, I already marked them for death because I know you're going to succeed because you're such a great warrior. So, like, you won't take any blame for this. You're not going to accumulate bad karma for defending your city from an opposing force. Like, yes, these are people you know, but the things they're about to do to you are unspeakable. Like, you have to protect your people. And so there's no fault when you go forward and you bring your army to defend your city and you slay these people. It's just the nature of life right now. This is something you just have to do. Now, that's an extreme example of this idea, but it's very relevant. There's a reason why the Bhagavad Gita is such a beloved text in the Eastern world. It's because that concept can be applied to so many different parts of our lives where, like, you just need to trim the fat and you're not going to be blamed or take the fault for it. So again, this is like, I'm getting the sense like God is on your side here kind of a thing. Like, it's going to be okay. You got to make some hard choices, but it's for the best. As long as you remain compassionate. Arjuna wasn't a savage who wanted to go to war. He was a very, very loving and compassionate man who unfortunately had to go to war. I'm going to pull a token for you, Aquarius. One last thing to think about and tie this all together. Tell me, Oracle. Let's help Aquarius out and give them something to end this on. What does Aquarius need to know? It's this guy. Saturn. Oof. We've got the planetary symbol for Saturn here. And the number 9. Don't know if that has any significance for you. But yeah, Saturn is a ruthless planetary spirit. That is for sure. But Saturn gets a bad rap. Saturn is also like the hope of those who are seeking salvation. The archangel of Saturn, I call him Uriel. He sometimes goes by Phanuel or Uriel, maybe. He's got a few different names, but anyway, he's the guy who helps and protects the meek, right? Those people who need salvation and who need help, who need a weight lifted. Like, the spirit of Saturn is going to be the guy that, like, he gets rid of the excess. When we say separate the wheat from the chaff, well, the guy with the sickle, the sickle, who gets rid of the chaff, that's Saturn. There is a ruthlessness to him, but also a necessity to him. And it's a good thing to get rid of the chaff because the wheat is what you want. It's a good thing to get rid of the weeds. You got to pluck the weeds out of your garden. Like, that's Saturn energy. Like, just get those damn weeds out of your garden so that your fruits and veggies and herbs can grow and flourish. So that there's this is just a reminder that, like, severity is part of life. Severity is part of the tree of life. It's the left-handed path. When you climb the tree of life, you have the path of grace and mercy on the right, and the path of strength and severity on the left. And not many people like walking the left-hand path because it's lonely and scary and difficult and weird and dark and all that sort of stuff. Ascending the tree of life on the left is difficult. But the good thing about being a human is that you don't just stay on one of these paths your whole life, or you don't need to. You just partake of the different paths as you need them and as it's appropriate. And acting appropriately, given the circumstances, sometimes puts us on the left-hand path. It would be inappropriate to be on the right-hand path or in the middle at certain times in our lives, where the situation demands a little left-handedness. But that doesn't mean we lose our sense of compassion or mercy. We still have it. but our actions have to be left-handed. And it's okay, because the result is beneficial. The result is a clean garden that can now flourish. The result is a bunch of nice wheat that you can make bread out of. So make sure, maybe you got to pay homage to Saturn. I don't know if you do planetary magic or archangel magic, but if you do, now would be a good time to perhaps pay homage to Saturn, or to pray to God and focus on the Saturnian aspects of divinity and try to get in touch with those and understand what they mean. A lot of people that look at these different aspects, planetary spirits and aspects of reality, spheres of the Tree of Life, tend to be afraid of the realms of Saturn and Mars. But I think it's important to look at these aspects of reality and become comfortable with them. So I think if you become comfortable with Saturn, you will master the art of adjustment. And the art of adjustment, of course, Saturn rules borders. He constricts borders, but he also expands borders. And if your borders have been expanded very, very rapidly, and now you have a lot to do, Saturn can help you manage what to do, because he's the one who expanded your borders. He's the one that gave you the more of these responsibilities, you know? And so he can help you manage them. So perhaps that's what this is like, ask for some management advice. Like, go to Saturn's management seminar. You know what I mean? But I sense a lot of good vibes here. I sense like you're gonna get a lot of good spiritual advice from like a high priestess nurse type character. Saturn is gonna show up in its helpful aspect for you, because remember, this is associated with the nurse. So like, I'm getting serious good vibes. You just got a lot of responsibilities right now. So this trimming the fat process that you're going through, don't beat yourself up over it. Just tread carefully with compassion, but be ruthless in how you trim the fat. Walk soft and carry a big stick, is that the phrase? Walk soft and carry a big scythe. So Aquarius, I think that's all the oracle and I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. It was great seeing you. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care.